Chapter 34, The Zombie Tide, the perfect opportunity to create a place rich in yin evil chi. The so-called yin evil steel is merely 100 refined steel that has absorbed a great deal of yin chi and evil chi. As for the 100 refined steel, it can be made from fine iron. Chu Xuan's storage bag had long been prepared with plenty of fine iron for the routine maintenance of magic tools. He only needed to find a place rich in yin evil, bury the 100 refined steel there, and let it absorb the yin evil chi. If he set up an array to gather yin evil chi, the formation of yin evil steel would be even faster. Yu country had long been controlled by the righteous 5 sects, and these places rich in yin evil chi were likely under the watchful eyes of the righteous cultivators. Should he dare to approach, he would certainly be subject to repeated questioning by them, and possibly even face life-threatening risks. But on this planet, Chu Xuan only needed to find a place with many zombies, kill them in batches, and let the yin evil chi condense. To gather yin evil chi without tens of thousands of zombies, it would hardly be possible. I need to look around nearby. Chu Xuan nodded slightly. He released Long Hu Bao to search the southern part of East Lake City, while he himself rode the Heavenly Star flying sword northward. However, although there were many zombies in East Lake City, they rarely gathered together, wandering aimlessly instead. Gathering these creatures would certainly be a great effort. After searching for several days without discovering a large gathering of zombies, Chu Xuan furrowed his brows. That day, Chu Xuan prepared a lavish lunch for himself. Just as he was about to start eating, Bao suddenly returned, barking several times in succession. Chu Xuan listened carefully and quickly understood what Bao was saying. There are quite a few tough-to-chew zombies appearing in the south of East Lake City. And there's a human squad fighting them. Interesting. Chu Xuan raised an eyebrow. Tough-to-chew zombies likely referred to higher-level zombies. After all, for Long, Hu, Bao, and the others, the zombies here were just food. The higher the level of the zombie, the tastier they found them. A large appearance of high-level zombies could be a sign of something. A light bulb went off in Chu Xuan's mind. In various zombie-themed works he had seen before, they often mentioned something called a zombie tide. The causes of zombie tides were bizarre and varied. It might be due to a single zombie hearing something or chasing a living person, thereby leading a group of zombies to move together. Zombies along the way, hearing the noise, would also join the group. Thus, like a rolling snowball, this would lead to the group growing larger and larger, eventually forming a terrifying zombie tide. Everywhere it passed, all living things would be obliterated. This wave-like swarm of zombies was particularly terrifying for human survivors. It was almost no different from a natural disaster. Of course, a zombie tide might also be led by high-level zombies. Some unique high-level zombies naturally had the ability to command lower-level zombies. This could also cause the snowball effect, expanding the number of zombies in the group to an incredibly terrifying degree. A large appearance of high-level zombies was likely the precursor to a zombie tide. With this thought, Chu Xuan immediately became excited. Zombie tide. What does this mean? Tens of thousands of zombies? No, perhaps even more. Isn't this the perfect opportunity to create a land rich in yin evil chi? Chu Xuan quickly finished his lunch like a whirlwind and immediately rode the Heavenly Star flying sword towards the south of East Lake City. After flying out of East Lake City's territory, he indeed saw a vast horde of zombies heading toward the city on the ground. Even a cursory scan showed that the number of zombies exceeded 50,000. Good. Chu Xuan was invigorated. He didn't pause, he immediately returned to the Haodai Hotel to start preparing the formation. He needed to have the formation ready before the horde arrived. He couldn't miss this great opportunity. Black Blade Security Company. A van carrying several exhausted individuals returned to their base. Wen Genjian, Wen Yun, and Tang Jinchuan jumped down. Song Dai came quickly and asked in a low voice, "How did it go?" Wen Yun held up a hand, lowering his voice, exactly 5 first-level zombies. Song Dai gasped. "Brother, we should retreat. The appearance of 5 first-level zombies at once is definitely a sign of a zombie tide." Wen Yun looked at Wen Genjian, unable to resist saying. Tang Jinchuan nodded repeatedly, "I agree." Wen Genjian sighed deeply, "What use is my being a second-level superhuman if in the end I still have to abandon the place where I grew up and leave my hometown?" Wen Yung sighed, "Brother, your promotion to second-level superhuman is great, but there's nothing we can do about a zombie tide. Under a zombie tide, how can there be any survivors? Even if you were a third-level superhuman, you wouldn't survive." Teng Jinchuan nodded, "I agree." When Genjian waved his hand, "Give the orders, let everyone pack up and prepare to evacuate East Lake City. Tang and I will carve out a route. Xiaoyon, you go south to scout and see if there really is a zombie tide. Day, pick a few brothers who can fix cars, look around nearby, and see if there are any more vehicles that can carry people. Our vehicles definitely won't be enough to take everyone." Wen Yun, Teng Jinchuan, and Song Day all nodded seriously and immediately got to work. Under the management of Wen Genjian and his team, the several hundred people of Black Blade Security Company were well disciplined. In 2 days, personnel and supplies were ready. However, the vehicles they found capable of running were still very limited. Even if each vehicle was packed to the brim, they could only fit about 100 people. At this moment, when Genjian and his 3 companions gathered in the hall with a map of East Lake City spread out in front of them. When Genjian spoke solemnly, "Everyone, the zombie tide is indeed coming, and we probably have about 4 days. But we still lack vehicles, not enough to take everyone away. The only solution now is to look for trucks, buses, and other large vehicles." When Genjian stretched out his finger and circled several spots on the map. These places, which include the bus company and large factories, may have undamaged trucks and vans. Our top priority is to secure these vehicles. He looked at the 3 men, pick a location each. None of the 3 complained and each went to a different site. They did not, because they were superhumans, hold themselves above others or regard the lives of ordinary people as mere dust. There was a time when they too were at the bottom of society. Having been rained on themselves, they now sought to provide shelter for others. East Lake City Bus Company. Teng Jinchuan, along with 3 strong men, drove to this location. The van stopped. Teng Jinchuan squeezed out of the van door with some difficulty before getting down. One of the men behind him chuckled, "Bro Tang, you're so fat, it might affect our escape. If there are high-level zombies here, you definitely won't run as fast as us." The other 2 men joined in the teasing. Teng Jinchuan scoffed, patted his belly, and immediately a wave rippled through. "What do you know, this fat on my body is what's going to save my life. You'll see when we really face danger." Chapter 35, A Sword Immortal. The trio, led by Teng Jinchuan, entered the bus company. The bus company looked no different from any other place nowadays, with weeds growing everywhere. It was a mystery how these weeds had managed to break through the hard concrete. Perhaps even the weeds were affected by psionics. The bus company was eerily quiet. It felt like a spider's web, waiting for the unwitting to stumble into it. Teng Jinchuan instinctively felt uneasy. Not a single zombie was in sight, which was very odd. "Holy shit." Suddenly, one of the men behind him exclaimed in shock. Teng Jinchuan turned around and saw that the man had just squashed a palm-sized spider. "Damn, a spider just dropped down in front of me, scared the hell out of me," the man said, still shaken. "A spider scares you like that, what are you going to do if a high-level zombie shows up?" "You'll probably die of fright," the other 2 men scoffed. The frightened man's face turned red with embarrassment. Teng Jinchuan sternly said, "Didn't I tell you to keep quiet when we came in? Have you forgotten?" The 3 men immediately fell silent. "There are 3 buses here. Each of you check one." "I'll check the warehouse over there." Teng Jinchuan pointed to 3 relatively intact buses on the square. These buses, weathered by the elements, were unlikely to be operational, but they had to be checked anyway. What if they could still run? The 3 men got to work, each heading to inspect one of the buses. Teng Jinchuan headed straight for the warehouse, which was supposed to have a few spare buses. However, he had just reached the warehouse door when he heard a scream from behind. Teng Jinchuan's heart tightened and he quickly turned around. The other 2 men also rushed over. "Help me, help me." The screaming man staggered out of the bus. On his neck was a blood-red spider the size of a wash basin. Its 8 thumb-sized eyes rolled wildly. Its sharp fangs were already embedded in the man's jugular vein. The man's face was turning a ghastly shade of purple as if venom was being injected into his body from the fangs. The 2 men standing by Teng Jinchuan turned pale. A spider as big as a wash basin was enough to terrify anyone. They had never seen such a monster before. Chu Xuan's reaction was swift. He suddenly pulled a small knife from his waist, slicing through the layer of skin on his belly. Instead of yellow fat flowing out, it solidified under his control into a spear over a meter long. With a roar, Chu Xuan hurled the spear with all his might. Whoosh! The spear tore through the air at high speed. The giant spider, still busy injecting venom into its prey, hadn't anticipated such a tactic. In an instant, the spear pierced through its head. The corpulent body fell to the ground. The man who had been bitten went limp and collapsed to the ground as well. The other two men hurried forward to support him. However, the bitten man's eyes were vacant, and he could no longer speak. Chu Xuan sighed lightly. The way a spider preys, injecting digestive enzymes into its victim, means is already mostly an empty shell. Let's end his suffering now, rather than let him endure more pain. The faces of the two men were somber, but they could only pull out their knives to grant their companion an early departure. Chu Xuan rummaged through the abdomen of the basin-sized spider but found no psionic core. This meant it wasn't even a level 1 superhuman creature. Chu Xuan's heart sank. If such a creature could easily kill a strong adult male and wasn't even level 1, what would happen if there were stronger spiders in this bus company? They might all perish here. 10. That bus can be started, but it's missing some parts. We need to check the other buses for replacements, said a man, taking a deep breath. I've already brought the toolbox for repairs. Chu Xuan nodded. I'll help you find the parts, you two stay here. There might be more spiders hiding around, so stay in the open area and don't get close to the buses. Okay. Both men immediately nodded. Chu Xuan quickly inspected the other buses. Sure enough. As he was checking the second bus, a basin-sized shadow suddenly pounced from a dark corner, aiming straight for his neck. Chu Xuan was prepared. He immediately picked up a broken plastic seat nearby to block it. Clang! The fangs collided with the seat, making a loud noise. The spider, failing to bite him, emitted a sharp screech that seemed to carry an intense penetrating power. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Soon, responding calls came from every dark corner of the square. Phut! Chu Xuan, his face ashen, thrust the spear, skewering the spider. He immediately got off the bus. Run! Run! Chu Xuan yelled. Now was not the time to keep quiet. He hadn't anticipated that the bus company was a spider's nest. Had he known, he would never have come here. This place was too damn terrifying. Seeing this, the two men also sprinted with all their might. Now, the mission was the least of their concerns. Survival was what mattered most. The next moment, palm-sized spiders surged out from every dark corner like a tidal wave, among them a multitude of basin-sized blood-red spiders. Chu Xuan glanced back and saw two spiders as big as desks, their multitude of compound eyes, sharp fangs, and bristling hairs chilling enough to raise goosebumps. Suddenly, a massive shadow descended from the sky. With a loud crash, it blocked the exit of the bus company. Dust billowed everywhere. Chu Xuan strained his eyes through the dust and shockingly discovered that it was a mass of spider silk. He quickly turned around and saw strands of spider silk as thick as an adult's thigh stretching from the warehouse of the bus company. It wasn't hard to guess that this large bundle of spider silk had been violently flung from the warehouse, smashing into the door. Chu Xuan immediately used his fat to conjure a spear and hurled it towards the web of silk. Clang! The spear collided with the spider silk, emitting a sound like metal striking metal. The spear was flung far away, landing softly as it reverted to fat. Undeterred, Chu Xuan continuously converted his fat into weapons like a greatsword and a battle-axe, attempting to sever the silk. However, after expending 2/3 of his fat reserves and bleeding from his palms, the spider silk remained unscathed, showing no signs of damage. These spider silks are incredibly tough. It must be the spider queen. Chu Xuan exclaimed in fear. The silk was harder than metal chains, it had to be the spider queen. He even felt a bit of relief. The warehouse was clearly the spider queen's lair. It was fortunate he hadn't approached it earlier, otherwise, he would have likely been killed instantly. Just then, another huge spider web shot out from the warehouse, enveloping the three men completely. The web covered a vast area, leaving Chu Xuan with no chance to escape. Thump. The web instantly stuck to the three men. The more they struggled, the more securely they were bound. Damn it, we are done. Chu Xuan felt a surge of despair. Suddenly, a sword's hum echoed through the sky. Chu Xuan focused his eyes and saw a figure standing on a flying sword, hovering in midair. His eyes widened in disbelief. What? A sword immortal. Chapter 36, the Yin-Evil Soul-Snatching Array. In Chu Xuan's view, the figure in the air was clothed, flowing freely, riding the wind as if stepping on nothing. His gaze was like a flash of lightning, seemingly ready to unleash a sword shadow at any moment. The other two men also saw the figure in midair and were too shocked to speak. They couldn't fathom how, in a world overrun by zombies, such an out-of-place character could suddenly appear. But upon reflection, given that a zombie apocalypse had erupted, the emergence of a sword immortal didn't seem too outlandishly fantastical. Chu Xuan stood on his heavenly star-flying sword, looking downward. With a single slash in midair, a streak of blood shot forth. With a whoosh, the web of spider silk was easily sliced through as if it were fragile paper. The streak of blood returned to his palm. It was the blood steel wire. Having easily cut through the spider silk, Chu Xuan was somewhat surprised himself. The toughness of the silk was much greater than he had anticipated. Such resilient silk could perhaps be used as a material for crafting magical instruments. This scene caught Chu Xuan's eye, and his jaw dropped in astonishment. Holy crap! I exerted all my strength, used up 2/3 of my body's fat, and couldn't even make a dent in the spider silk. And this person severed it in an instant. Who exactly is this person? Chu Xuan acted again. The blood steel wire, like a streak of scarlet lightning, flashed through the air. Thump, thump, thump. Wherever it passed, dozens of spider silk strands were instantaneously sliced in half. The spider queen inside the warehouse immediately let out an angry screech. Spiders of all sizes surged from all directions like a tide. Chu Xuan smiled faintly. These little creatures, they think they can harm me. With a simple gesture, Long, Hu, Bao, and other undead covered with a layer of hard bone armor suddenly appeared. At Chu Xuan's command, they charged into the swarm of spiders like tigers into a flock of sheep. Each undead was like a tank plowing relentlessly forward. Everywhere they went, spiders were blasted apart, torn open, leaving behind only limbs and broken bodies. Chu Xuan walked towards the warehouse as if strolling leisurely through a garden. All spiders in his path were obliterated by the undead, torn apart in an instant. It seemed as though nothing in this world could stop his advance. Good heavens, he can actually control zombies. The two men were dumbstruck, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Such power, such composure, it was truly the bearing of a king. Chu Xuan's face was a picture of shock, his mouth hung open for a long while, unable to close. Snap. Chu Xuan moved unhurriedly, arriving at the front of the warehouse. With his hands clasped behind his back, he stood quietly. Long and Hu, having just obliterated a nearby spider, stamped the ground and quickly positioned themselves in front of Chu Xuan. They then launched powerful punches towards the sturdy warehouse door. Bang, bang, bang. Their fists fell like raindrops. The steel door, battered by the force, began to deform quickly. After 3 seconds, it could no longer withstand the pressure and burst open. Sunlight streamed in, revealing the interior of the warehouse to everyone. Inside was a world of white. The walls, ceiling, floor, and even the buses were covered with thick, tough spider silk. At the center of the warehouse was a massive cocoon, housing an enormous, plump spider the size of a small ruin. Its sharp fangs were longer than short knives. Even now, it continued to produce spider eggs non-stop. For some reason, these eggs were hatching at an alarmingly fast rate. One after another, palm-sized white spiders rapidly emerged from their shells and surged towards Chu Xuan. Clueless creatures, Chu Xuan uttered dismissively. The silk produced by this mutated spider queen was excellent, arguably the finest a chi refining stage cultivator could encounter. But that was all. It was merely excellent. Since it was so cluelessly determined to fight to the death, Chu Xuan was ready to fulfill its wish. He would send it to its end. Chu Xuan extended his right hand, letting it hang down calmly. In his palm, a cluster of green, mournful flames began to gather. These flames seemed capable of scorching the soul itself. Teng Jinchuan and his companions watched from a distance, feeling a chill in their hearts. He can also control fire. Teng Jinchuan was astounded. Initially, he had guessed that this person's talent was controlling zombies. But now, he discovered that this individual could also control fire. Could one person have two talents? Teng Jinchuan scratched his head. He had never seen such a thing. In the blink of an eye, the Never Fire Orb was ready. Chu Xuan had long perfected this spell. From the beginning of accumulation to full formation, the time had been compressed to a single breath, a matter of 3 to 4 seconds. Chu Xuan's expression remained indifferent as he hurled the Never Fire Orb forward. Long, Hu, Bao, and the other undead hastily cleared the path. As the Never Fire Orb made contact, it burned fiercely, never ceasing its flames. The creatures wisely did not wish to come into contact with this ghostly fire. The Spider Queen's 8 compound eyes suddenly shrank, sensing the terror of the green fireball. It screeched in alarm, causing a large number of spiders to abandon their attack and desperately throw themselves at the Never Fire Orb. However, the fire orb rolled forward like a boulder, crushing all living beings that dared to obstruct its path. The approaching spiders were instantly turned to ashes by the green flames, and the power of the Never Fire Orb showed no signs of diminishing. Closer and closer it came. In a final effort, the Spider Queen let out a piercing screech that resonated through the air. Despite being at least 30 meters away from the warehouse, Teng Jinchuan and the others felt as if their heads were being struck by a massive hammer. The 2 men with him passed out instantly, and Teng Jinchuan nearly lost consciousness himself, seeing stars before his eyes. Just before blacking out completely, he saw the Spider Queen's plump body engulfed by the green flames. Then he knew no more. Chu Xuan stood inside the warehouse, firmly planting a banner into the ground, completing the setup. The array he was assembling was called the Yin Evil Soul Snatching Array, which included the Qi Gathering Array, the Evil Qi Array, and the Soul Snatching Array, among several smaller arrays. This array would cover an unprecedentedly large area, requiring a total of 360 banners for its formation. The East Lake City Bus Company was one of these 360 anchor points. He had not expected that his visit would also inadvertently reveal a level 3 mutated Spider Queen. These 3 psionic cores, you 3 divide them among yourselves. Chu Xuan casually tossed the cores to Long, Hu, and Bao. Hu swiftly swallowed a core and then scurried up to Chu Xuan with something in hand. Chu Xuan looked down to see a strand of spider silk, unusually resilient. Touching it, he felt a cool sensation. Hu gestured animatedly. Chu Xuan nodded. Did you dig this out of the fire? Interesting, to find spider silk that can withstand nether fire. Well done, this blood pearl is yours. He flicked a blood pearl to Hu as a reward, which Hu excitedly accepted and began to absorb on the side. Chu Xuan pocketed the spider silk. This cool, fire-resistant silk was perfect as one of the materials for crafting the Evil Soul Chain. While the main material, Yin Evil Steel, was fixed, the other 6 auxiliary materials could vary. Let's move on to the next anchor point, Chu Xuan said as he gathered Long, Hu, Bao, and the others, swiftly heading to the next location. Including this one, he had now planted 300 of the 360 banners. With the zombie tide nearing East Lake City, there was no time to waste. Chapter 37, Zombie Tide is Coming. More than an hour later, Teng Jinchuan and his 2 companions slowly regained consciousness. Upon waking, their heads throbbed with unbearable pain, as if a giant elephant had trampled over them repeatedly. The 2 men remained frightened, vigilantly scanning their surroundings. Teng Jinchuan, mustering the last remnants of his strength, formed a shield from his dwindling fat reserves and cautiously approached the warehouse. However, inside the warehouse, there was nothing left. The bloated body of the mutated Spider Queen had vanished without a trace. The spider webs that had once blanketed the warehouse were now completely incinerated, leaving only a few strands in the corners. Had Teng Jinchuan not seen these remnants, he might have doubted whether the mutated Spider Queen had ever existed. He could not see the array flags that Chu Xuan had planted. Chu Xuan, to ensure security, had concealed all the flags with an illusion array, making them invisible to those with weak psionic abilities. The 2 men supported each other as they staggered over to Teng Jinchuan. Observing the now empty warehouse, they couldn't help but feel amazed. Bro Tang, seems we've benefited from that great man's actions, one of them murmured. Yeah, if it weren't for him taking out that mutated spider queen, would be dead by now. It looks like all the spiders here are gone. We can safely check the buses now, the other added softly. Rejuvenated by this realization, Chu Xuan said, right. Let's make the most of our time. We'll report everything that happened here to the boss once we get back. Their luck was good. 3 of the buses in the warehouse were largely intact and operational. 2 others were slightly damaged but could still be driven after some repairs. Moreover, they found a significant amount of gasoline and diesel in the warehouse which could serve as fuel for their evacuation. 5 buses and only 3 of us to drive them, Chu Xuan declared, waving his hand. Let's head back to the company immediately and get some help. By dusk, they returned to Black Blade Security Company. In the main hall, when Ganjian, Wenyuan, and Song Dai looked utterly dejected. Chu Xuan entered with a joyful expression, but his face fell when he saw them, especially upon noticing that Song Dai was missing an arm. What happened? Things didn't go well. Chu Xuan asked. Wenyuan managed a bitter smile. My trip to the factory went smoothly enough, but I only found 1 large truck that was still operational. Song Dai, still pale, spoke softly. I encountered 2 high-level zombies. Everyone I took with me died, and I lost an arm but barely managed to survive. When Ganjian sighed, we only found 1 large truck, which is far from enough. If push comes to shove, we might have to draw lots. He couldn't finish the sentence. The mere thought of drawing lots to decide who could escape on the truck was too cruel. Most of the members of Black Blade Security Company were old buddies who had been with him since before the zombie crisis started. The idea of abandoning them was unbearable. Chu Xuan chuckled, breaking the somber mood. Don't look so gloomy, I've got some good news. The 3 men looked at him in surprise. Did you find some buses? They asked. Chu Xuan grinned mischievously. Guess how many? Wenyuan thought for a moment and held up 2 fingers. 2. Chu Xuan shook his head. Song Dai held up 3 fingers. 3. Again, Chu Xuan shook his head. When Ganjian frowned, don't tell me there's only 1. How would that be good news? Chu Xuan couldn't stop smiling. You're all wrong, it's 5. When Ganjian and the others were stunned, then their eyes lit up with elation. 5 buses. If they packed them a bit more, they could surely fit everyone. There might even be enough room left over to load some extra supplies. Tang. You better not be joking. When Ganjian said excitedly. Chu Xuan replied earnestly, I've checked them myself. All 5 buses are in good working condition, there are some spare parts, and there's plenty of fuel. It's enough to get us to the territory of the Linjiang Army. The Linjiang Army's main stronghold was in Dragon River City, the capital of Linjiang Province. Although the direct distance from East Lake City to Longjiang City was only about 500 kilometers, the actual journey could be fraught with various unforeseen dangers, and the road traveled would definitely exceed 500 kilometers. Naturally, the more fuel they had, the better. Great. As soon as it's light tomorrow, we'll go and bring the buses over, when Ganjian said, hardly able to contain his joy. Even Song Dai's pale face brightened slightly with relief. Weren't you in any danger, Tang? Wenyuan asked. Chu Xuan's expression turned serious. There was danger. If it weren't for some good luck, I might not have made it back. When Ganjian and the others tensed up, tell us everything. Chu Xuan then recounted everything that had happened at the East Lake City Bus Company. After hearing the tale, the 3 men were speechless, their minds struggling to settle from the shock of the ordeal described. Flying with a sword. Controlling zombies. And he can control fire. And the spider silk that you couldn't break after dozens of attempts, he just sliced through it effortlessly. The 3 men exchanged glances, each seeing the shock in the other's eyes. Who was this person? Did East Lake City really harbor such a formidable individual? Controlling zombies. Back on the highway, didn't a wolf pack get wiped out by a superhuman who could control zombies? Wenyuan suddenly remembered a past incident. The elimination of the wolf pack had occurred several months ago. When Ganjian also paused, then slapped his thigh in realization, that's right. It all connects now. Could it be the same person? Song Dai exclaimed in surprise, which means East Lake City has been home to a powerful superhuman all this time. The trio was momentarily thrilled. This superhuman must be of a high level, at least a second level, and possibly even the legendary third level. However, their excitement soon faded as they remembered the grim reality. Even the most powerful superhuman is no match for a zombie tide. General Yi of the Linjiang army, a third-level superhuman, had once single-handedly broken through a zombie horde to rescue 16 researchers from the Life Sciences Research Institute. Yet, even he wouldn't dare to face a horde of tens of thousands of zombies alone. There's a saying that fits well here: enough ants can kill an elephant. A superhuman's psionic powers are not infinite. Once depleted, they must rely on their physical bodies, which can easily be overwhelmed by a tide-like swarm of zombies. Moreover, some individuals' talents are not suited for combat. What good is a third-level superhuman then? When the zombie tide comes, wouldn't they need to flee East Lake City just like everyone else? Let's not overthink this. Our evacuation plan remains unchanged, Wen Genjian said solemnly. Agreed, the three responded gravely. The next day, 5 buses, 1 large truck, and 4 cars were ready outside Black Blade Security Company. The company's premises had been cleared out. All important materials, grains, and other provisions were loaded into the vehicles. Under Tan Jinchuan's direction, every member efficiently boarded the vehicles. At Wen Ganjian's command, the convoy set off, heading northward. Chapter 38, Zombie Tide Approaches, Mysterious Fog. At the junction of East Lake City and Two Dragons City on the highway, the evacuation convoy came to a halt. The terrain here was elevated, allowing a view of the southern part of East Lake City. Wen Genjian climbed atop one of the vehicles and pulled out his binoculars to take one last look at the city he had never left since he was born. Leaving now stirred a bittersweet feeling inside him. He wanted to take a few more glances at his home, suspecting he might never see it again. Wen Yun, Song Dai, and Teng Jinchuan joined him. The rest of the members stayed inside the vehicles as Wen Genjian had ordered. Too many people getting out and then needing to board again would waste valuable time. It was best to stay put. I see the horde, it's rapidly approaching the city, Wen Yun, with sharp eyes, pointed towards the southeast, speaking in a hushed tone. Wen Genjian and the others directed their gaze in that direction. Indeed, they saw an immense, seemingly endless tide of zombies relentlessly charging into the small city. There were still some remaining survivors in East Lake City who hadn't joined any factions. They only managed to scream before being overwhelmed by the sweeping tide of undead. There are even flying zombies now. Song Dai exclaimed, noticing some zombies in the sky sprouting wings, his eyes widening in shock. It's been 5 years, various advanced zombies have appeared, Wen Genjian murmured. If our growth rate can't keep up with that of the zombies, we'll eventually be consumed or killed by them. Wen Yun, Song Dai, and Tang Jinchuan nodded in agreement, acknowledging the harsh reality. Psionic energy had permeated the globe, causing animals and plants to undergo wild mutations. If humans couldn't harness psionic energy to climb the evolutionary ladder and adapt to this new psionic era, they would inevitably be outpaced and replaced by new species. Let's go, our scent will eventually be picked up by the zombies, and it'll be too late if we delay any longer, Song Dai sighed softly. Wen Yun and Tang Jinchuan nodded and began to head back to the vehicles. However, Wen Genjian suddenly noticed something and uttered a soft "her." "What is it, brother? What are you still looking at?" Wen Yun asked, puzzled. Wen Genjian pointed towards a specific area. "You have sharp eyes, look over there, is that area shrouded in thick fog?" Wen Yun activated his talent, Farsight, enhancing his vision to focus on distant objects at the expense of his near sight. He immediately noticed, indeed, there's a heavy fog over that area and it's not present anywhere else. Teng Jinchuan and Song Dai, hearing the conversation, came back. Teng Jinchuan chuckled, "What are we looking at?" Wen Yun pointed to the area and asked Teng Jinchuan, "Teng, have you been to that area?" "There's heavy fog now." Teng Jinchuan squinted toward the distance and nodded, "Isn't that the territory formerly held by the Spirit Hounds? I passed through there on my way to the East Lake City bus depot a few days ago. There was no fog at that time. Strange there's fog now." Song Dai commented lightheartedly, "With the zombie crisis erupting, what's so strange about a bit of fog?" Wen Yun and Teng Jinchuan nodded in agreement. Indeed, in a world where the unnatural and unscientific had become commonplace, not every anomaly warranted concern. "Hey! A lot of zombies are being diverted, rushing into that fog. Wen Yun, intending to deactivate his farsight, suddenly noticed something alarming. He could see clearly that dozens of zombies, followed by hundreds, were veering off from the main horde and charging into the fog. Wen Genjian, Chu Xuan, and Song Dai were taken aback by his report. What was happening? Had the zombies changed their nature? Instead of chasing living humans, were they now drawn to empty air? Within less than 5 minutes, masses of zombies were breaking off from the horde heading north and sprinting into the foggy area. This included many robust, agile advanced zombies. What on earth is in that fog to draw so many zombies? Wen Yun kept his eyes fixed on the fog-covered area. After another 5 minutes, Wen Yun reported a shocking observation. The northbound zombie horde had completely turned and was now heading into the foggy area. Do you see what's happening? Wen Genjian pressed for details. Wen Yun relayed what he saw. Wen Genjian and the others were stunned. Had the zombie tide been diverted just like that? What sort of allure did that foggy area hold? Zombies enter the foggy area and then just disappear, none come out, Wen Yun added solemnly. Wen Genjian and the others were even more amazed. Could that foggy area be a bottomless pit? Did it have the capacity to hold as many zombies as could possibly enter? After a moment's contemplation, Wen Genjian ordered, "Command the convoy to halt, everyone stays in their vehicles." And so they waited, from daylight until nightfall, watching the mysterious fog that seemed to swallow an entire zombie horde. The nights after the zombie outbreak were terrifying. Dangerous zombies and mutated animals could be hiding anywhere. Wen Genjian, including himself as one of 4 superhumans, organized 2 night patrol teams in shifts. One team for the early part of the night and another for the latter part. Together with the sturdy men from Black Blade Security Company, they formed a formidable watch over their campsite. With hundreds of people camping outside, the strong human scent could attract unknown creatures, and everyone was on edge. However, the night passed without significant incident. Aside from a few stray zombies and mutated wild dogs, there were no surprises. As the sun began to rise, Wen Genjian and the 3 other superhumans stood early on a hillside, looking towards the city. The fog is still there, it hasn't dispersed, observed Wen Genjian. There are still a lot of zombies and supernatural creatures converging from all directions, rushing into the fog, added another. Brother, do you think we weren't attacked last night because all those creatures were attracted to the fog? Wen Yun pondered, looking at the one around him. Wen Genjian replied dryly, I'm right behind you. Wen Yun laughed awkwardly and turned around. Chu Xuan seriously suggested, I think so too. That fog seems to have a strong attraction for supernatural beings. Maybe it's like something out of a novel, could it be some kind of precious natural treasure has appeared? Do you think those zombies and supernatural creatures might fight each other over it? A battle to the death, where we could just pick up the spoils afterward, he speculated. The prospect excited Wen Genjian and Wen Yun. Indeed, it was possible. If they could scavenge in the aftermath, they might obtain a wealth of psionic cores. In the current world, psionic cores were absolutely invaluable. Whether for fueling one's evolution or for trading, they were a prime resource. However, Song Dai cautioned, we should leave as soon as possible. If any of those creatures get hold of whatever is creating that fog and become stronger, even reaching level 3 or 4 as a superhuman, we won't stand a chance against them. Don't forget, we have hundreds of ordinary people relying on us here. We need to live up to their trust. The weight of Song Dai's words settled heavily on them. He was right. The lives of many were resting on the shoulders of these 4 superhumans. They couldn't take that risk. They couldn't afford to gamble with so many lives at stake. Chapter 39, Thus Spoken, Do Not Approach. After much contemplation, Wen Genjian devised a compromise. I will approach the area alone to see exactly what's happening. If the situation becomes perilous, we'll evacuate immediately. His implication was clear, if the situation wasn't dire, there might be no need to flee. After all, the several hundred members of Black Blade Security Company were most familiar with East Lake City. Starting anew in an unfamiliar place would pose significant challenges. If they could avoid leaving, they would. Seeing them about to protest, Wen Genjian cut them off, I'm a level 2 superhuman, physically stronger than any of you. No more discussions are needed. Wen Yun and the others fell silent. Wen Genjian took a walkie-talkie and drove a car back into the city. As they watched him leave, Wen Yun, Song Dai, and Tang Jinchuan felt a deep unease. Over 2 hours later, when Genjian arrived just outside the area enshrouded by the mysterious fog. The silence within the fog was eerie. It seemed as if all noise had been swallowed whole. Logically, if something was drawing these zombies and supernatural creatures into a conflict, there should have been a cacophony of chaos. Why was it so quiet? The fog churned ominously, resembling a malevolent, man-eating demon. Wen Genjian, aware of the dangers, did not recklessly enter. Instead, he looked around and stopped at a discarded fire hydrant. He settled down beside it, wrapped his arms around the hydrant, and twisted sharply. A crisp snap echoed as he forcibly unscrewed the hydrant. Becoming a superhuman and integrating a psionic core had not granted Wen Genjian any particularly strange abilities. Instead, his arms had grown incredibly strong. Since nobody had given a name to his talent, he called it Strong. After advancing to a second-level superhuman, his arms had grown even stronger. Using brute strength to twist off a fire hydrant was not too difficult for him. Wen Genjian let out a low roar as he unleashed his power, hurling the hydrant forcefully into the fog. The hydrant tore through the mist and crashed to the ground 20 meters away, briefly dispersing the fog. With the fog momentarily cleared by the impact, Wen Genjian could finally see the scene within. The area covered by the fog was dim and ghostly, more reminiscent of hell than of the human world. He was startled to discover that the zombies and supernatural creatures stood motionless, rooted to the spot. Numerous dark swords, formed from condensed black mist, darted back and forth through the air. With each pass, they pierced the hearts of the undead and extraordinary beings. Those struck down were immediately drained of their vital essence, their corpses withering into desiccated husks. Wen Genjian's eyes widened in disbelief. Even in the first year of the zombie apocalypse, when East Lake City had transformed into a veritable purgatory, he had endured. Yet, the spectacle before him was still profoundly shocking. What had transpired here? And what were these phantom black swords? Suddenly, his walkie-talkie crackled to life. "Boss, look up. Quickly, above you." Urged by the voice, Wen Genjian hastily looked overhead. To his astonishment, he saw a figure standing upon a flying sword, looming high above him. The piercing gaze and the daunting aura felt as if an invisible hand were clenched around his throat. A memory flashed through Wen Genjian's mind. That day at the East Lake City bus depot, Tang Jinchuan had been ambushed by a swarm of spiders, including a tremendously powerful mutated spider mother. It was then that a young man wielding a flying sword appeared, slaying the mutated spider mother and indirectly saving them all. The figure before him now, also maneuvering a flying sword and similarly youthful, must be the same person. Chu Xuan looked down upon Wen Genjian and spoke indifferently. "Hadn't you left? Why return?" He had been aware since the dawn of Black Blade Security Company's intended departure from East Lake City. Presumably, they had decided to evacuate only after noticing the encroaching tide of corpses. He had no ties to these people and thus had not interfered. Over the past few days, Chu Xuan had been atop a nearby skyscraper, monitoring the situation within the array he had set, the Yin Evil Soul Snatching Array. Now that someone had approached the perimeter of his array, it was necessary for him to make an appearance to prevent any disturbances. "We feared that formidable supernatural beings might emerge here, so I came to assess the situation," Wen Genjian explained, his forehead beading with sweat. This man had effortlessly slain the mutated spider mother. To him, crushing Wen Genjian would be no different than crushing an ant. He spoke cautiously, wary of offending the mysterious and potent figure before him. Chu Xuan surveyed him briefly and stated calmly, "Any living being that enters will not come out alive. Let that be the end of it. Within a kilometer of this place, do not approach any closer." With those final words, he stamped on his heavenly star flying sword and vanished into the sky like a streak of sword light, leaving no trace behind. Chu Xuan did not intend to kill this person as long as he did not disrupt his plans. If this mortal had possessed great merit, killing him would have damaged his virtue. The oppressive weight that had felt like Mount Tai on Wen Genjian's shoulders lifted at that moment. He collapsed to the ground, his body limp. Glancing down, he noticed his garment was soaked with sweat. So powerful, he didn't even need to lift a finger. "A few glances and a few words had me drenched in sweat." Wen Genjian chuckled wryly to himself. Once again, the walkie-talkie crackled. "Brother, how did it go? Did that person give you any trouble?" Wen Yun eagerly asked. Wen Genjian took a deep breath before replying, "No, he just warned me not to approach the foggy area. He also said that any living thing that enters the fog will not come out alive. I saw it for myself. Many of the zombies that entered the fog have already died, and the rest will likely die within a few days. We can rest easy now." Teng Jinchuan and Song Dai were astonished, but considering the stranger's formidable abilities, it seemed unlikely that he would lie to them. This reassurance allowed them to relax. When Genjian continued, "Let's call the convoy back. We no longer need to evacuate East Lake City. This wave of zombies, numbering in the tens of thousands, has perished in the fog. East Lake City will actually be the safest place for the next few years." Wen Yong and the others were visibly brightened by this news. The city and its surroundings were now cleared of zombies and supernatural creatures, a tremendous stroke of fortune. It was almost like a paradise. Wen Yong, suit the brothers and have them return in batches. "There's no rush," Wen Genjian instructed. "Don't worry, brother. And about my box of game consoles, don't lose it," Wen Genjian added urgently. Wen Yong replied with a laugh, "You're even more anxious than I am." 2 days later, within the Yin Evil Soul Snatching Array, Chu Xuan rode his heavenly star flying sword into the heart of the formation. With the array disc in hand, the black swords formed from condensed evil chi did not attack him. Chu Xuan looked around. No figures stood in place anymore, just swathes of fallen zombies and supernatural creatures, like harvested rice. Chu Xuan made his way to the core of the formation, where a deep pit was located. The evil chi condensed from the dead zombies and supernatural beings flowed toward this pit. At the center of the pit, a faint cold light flickered. Chu Xuan's face lit up with delight. Perhaps due to the rich concentration of evil chi, the formation of Yin Evil Steel was occurring faster than he had anticipated. At this rate, in less than 2 months, he would have a batch of high-quality Yin Evil Steel. Chapter 40, The Auspicious Clouds and the Soul-Cleansing Golden Rain. Chu Xuan stepped out of the array's bounds, content with his work. A sudden impulse made him look up, and to his astonishment, he saw the sky filled with multicolored auspicious clouds. These clouds churned and transformed into the shapes of dragons and phoenixes, mythical creatures that showered the earth with the light of good fortune. Bathed in this auspicious light, Chu Xuan felt an enlightening clarity wash over him, his spirit buoyant as if ascending to immortality. All his previous confusions regarding the blood evil demon refining scripture seemed to dissolve instantly as if he had been granted profound insights. Moments later, the skies rumbled with the sound of spring thunder, yet there was no hint of darkness on the horizon. Soon, a fine rain began to fall. Astoundingly, the droplets were golden, as though forged from molten gold. Chu Xuan stood motionless in this golden shower, each drop that touched him quickly merging into his body. With his eyes closed, he deeply sensed the rain's effect and was amazed to discover his soul expanding at an incredible rate. Previously, he could control a maximum of 10 corpse puppets at once. If any of these possessed a higher rank, his capacity diminished further. For instance, with corpse puppets like Long, Hu, and Bao, he could manage only 3 at most. Should any of them advance to the rank of corpse general equivalent to a foundation establishment stage cultivator, he would not be able to control any others. Now, after the baptism of the Golden Rain, he felt capable of controlling up to 20 corpse puppets. Even if Long, Hu, or Bao advanced to corpse general, he could manage them with ease. Auspicious clouds and soul-cleansing golden rain. Chu Xuan finally opened his eyes, marveling at the phenomena. This was indeed the merit accrued from slaying nearly 100,000 zombies. Compared to the previous manifestation of golden blossoms that had subtly enhanced his fate and longevity, the benefits brought by this celestial event were significantly greater. The soul-cleansing golden rain had enhanced his soul, a rarity for cultivators at the foundation establishment stage, who had few methods to strengthen their spirits. Chu Xuan was aware of a technique within the Infinite Sect called Soul Refining Technique, which even at its pinnacle only slightly bolstered the soul, perhaps by 10 to 20% at most. Yet, nothing compared to the Golden Rain, which had doubled the robustness of his spirit. Looking down, Chu Xuan noticed that even the unknown wild grass at his feet had undergone a transformation under the Golden Rain, appearing unusually lush and vibrant. Perhaps one day, you too shall transcend the mundane and ascend to sanctity. With a faint smile, Chu Xuan commanded his heavenly star flying sword and turned to leave. After his departure, the wild grasses suddenly began to vie for the remaining soul-cleansing golden rain. Their roots turned into iron chains and their leaves into swords, relentlessly slaughtering their kin. Fields of grass perished, their sap splashing out in golden hues. Ultimately, only one victor survived. It unearthed its roots and thrust them into the bodies of its kin, reaching into the splattered golden sap. Quickly, it absorbed all that remained of the soul-cleansing golden rain. Within minutes, it blossomed and bore fruit rapidly. A bird flying overhead spotted the fruit and swooped down to consume it effortlessly. Not knowing how far it had flown, the bird suddenly slowed and ultimately plummeted to the ground, dead. Inside its body, a vibrant green sprout emerged, rapidly growing into a lush wild grass indistinguishable from the others, except perhaps when the fierce wind blew, one might notice the sharp fangs it seemed to grow. At Black Blade Security Company, after 2 days, all members had returned to their original positions. However, everyone watched the dense fog in the distance with apprehension, always half expecting it to spread someday and engulf the entire city of East Lake. Wen Yung would stand at the highest nearby point every day, keeping a vigilant watch over the fog morning, noon, and night. On this day, as usual, he activated his farsight and looked towards that area, only to be abruptly stunned. There, magnificent 5-colored clouds spread across the sky, condensing into dragons and phoenixes of an incredibly mystical nature. Golden rain began to fall from the sky. Wen Yong's eyes widened in amazement. Such an auspicious omen. To think he would be so fortunate to witness such a spectacle in his lifetime. Not only did he see this phenomenon, but other early risers within Black Blade Security Company also caught sight of it from afar, equally astounded. Word quickly spread, and soon, nearly half of Black Blade's personnel gathered on the rooftop, looking out at the scene. What exactly is happening? It feels like the celestial omens recorded in ancient histories. Could it be that East Lake City has birthed an immortal? Should we get closer to have a look? The crowd buzzed with speculation. Some, bolder than others, suggested approaching for a closer inspection. "Shut up!" A stern voice called from behind. The man approaching, with a buzz-cut and notably robust arms and strong build, was none other than Wen Ganjian. "Before you returned to the company, I had already ordered that no one should approach within a kilometer of the foggy area. Can't you understand human speech?" Wen Ganjian stared down the crowd, his rebuke cutting through the murmurs. The people lowered their heads, overawed by the authority of a level 2 superhuman. They dared not meet his gaze. "Those who just mentioned wanting to approach the fog, confine yourselves for 3 days." Wen Ganjian's stern voice commanded. "Yes," came the feeble response from one of the individuals. "Disperse now and attend to your duties." Wen Ganjian waved his hand, and the crowd quickly scattered. Wen Yung sighed lightly and turned to Wen Ganjian. "Brother, do you think this is good or bad?" "It's a multicolored auspicious cloud, it should be a good omen," Wen Ganjian responded seriously. "I suspect this auspicious sign is related to that cultivator. From now on, we must enforce stricter controls over our company members. We cannot allow anyone to approach that area." Wen Ganjian was somber. The death of one is a minor matter. If that one person were to anger that cultivator, no amount of remedy would suffice afterward. Wen Yun, Teng Jinchuan, and Song Dai all nodded seriously in agreement. Understood. 2 months flashed by in the blink of an eye. At Haodai Hotel, Chu Xuan exhaled a breath of turbid air and looked at the flawless mid-grade magic tool in front of him, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. These 2 months were not spent solely in sedentary cultivation. Instead, he practiced tool refining daily. Tool refining differs slightly from pill concoction. While pill concoction primarily uses spiritual herbs, tool refining uses metals, which often obstruct spiritual thoughts, making tool refining somewhat more challenging. This was precisely why Chu Xuan had started practicing early, accumulating experience. Clearly, the immense merit he carried once again provided assistance. After several failures, he became adept at producing lower-grade magic tools with a low failure rate of only 30%. After refining lower-grade tools for a month and reducing the failure rate to 10%, Chu Xuan began attempting mid-grade magic tools. Now, he had managed to control the failure rate of mid-grade magic tools to 30%. In the Mystic Azure Realm, Chu Xuan, with such a level of proficiency, would be considered a bona fide tool refiner. After a brief rest, Chu Xuan laid out new materials with confidence. Yin evil steel, white bone bamboo, intoxicating vine. These materials were essential for crafting the evil soul chain. As for a powerful living soul, Chu Xuan had yet to decide on one. However, this was not a pressing issue. The strength of the evil soul chain lay in its flexibility. Once the magic tool was forged, a living soul could be selected and infused at any time. Chu Xuan planned to extract the soul of a Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator or demonic beast upon his return to the Mystic Azure continent, maximizing the power of the evil soul chain. Begin. Chu Xuan exhaled a breath of turbid air and started crafting his lifebound magic tool, the evil soul chain. Chapter 41, Yin Evil Escape, Yin Evil Demon Claw. 36 days later, Chu Xuan appeared exhausted, exhaling turbid air, yet his eyes sparkled with a vivid sharpness. Before he hovered a pitch-black chain, the chain flickered with a ghostly light, as if one could hear the wails of aggrieved spirits. Finally done. A smile crossed his face. The process of crafting the evil soul chain went surprisingly smoothly. It was accomplished in one go. He had not felt the slightest hardship. With a mere thought from Chu Xuan, the evil soul chain began to whirl and zip through the air. In the blink of an eye, it shot forth. A loud crash resounded. The hotel's wall was blasted to pieces. With another thought, the evil soul chain returned to his side, slithering around him like a small snake. Chu Xuan looked pleased. Such were the benefits of a lifebound magic tool. In forging the evil soul chain, he had even cut off a part of his own soul and melded it into the artifact. If it did not feel like an extension of his own limb, it would not live up to the status of a lifebound magic tool. Chu Xuan beckoned with his hand, and the evil soul chain coiled around his waist like a belt. As long as the evil soul chain was on him, the spiritual chi within his body would continuously nurture this lifebound magic tool every moment. The grade of the evil soul chain would continue to rise along with his cultivation level. Now that my lifebound magic tool has been forged, it's time to elevate my other strengths. Foundation Establishment Stage spells and GU insects are the areas with the greatest potential for improvement. Let's start with the GU insects. I wonder if the blood steel wire GU egg on my body has hatched yet. Chu Xuan looked down at his left forearm. 3 months ago, just as he began setting up the Yin Evil Soul Snatching Array, he had taken the opportunity to implant a blood steel wire GU egg into his forearm. A Chi refining stage cultivator could only rear one blood steel wire. Rearing too many without enough sustenance could lead to a backlash from the blood steel wire. Now that Chu Xuan had advanced to the Foundation Establishment stage, he naturally could rear a second blood steel wire. Still no movement. Chu Xuan briefly sensed it, found no change in the GU egg, and shook his head. Then let's cultivate the Foundation Establishment stage spells first. Chu Xuan took out the Blood Evil Demon Refining Scripture. The Blood Evil Demon Refining Scripture was divided into 9 levels, corresponding to levels 1 through 9 of the Foundation Establishment stage. By mastering the first level, one could learn a lower-tier Foundation Establishment stage spell named Yin Evil Escape. By mastering the second level, one could learn the attack spell Yin Evil Demon Claw. Yin Evil Escape is a technique of evasion. Whether in pursuit or in flight, such techniques are indispensable. The speed of Yin Evil Escape is not particularly fast, but it possesses a unique feature: it can accelerate by consuming Yin Evil Chi. If one could continuously use Yin Evil Chi to perform the technique, its speed would rival that of a superior Foundation Establishment stage spell. Similarly, the Yin Evil Demon Claw, when fueled by Yin Evil Chi, becomes significantly more powerful. For most demonic cultivators, Yin Evil Chi is not so readily available. Those natural sources of Yin Evil long since have been tightly controlled by righteous sects, leaving no room for others to share. But for Chu Xuan, Yin Evil Chi was within easy reach. The Yin Evil Soul Snatching Array was rich in Yin Evil Chi. I need to forge a vessel specifically for holding Yin Evil Chi. When pursuing or escaping, I can use Yin Evil Chi to execute the Yin Evil Escape, making it difficult for early Foundation Establishment cultivators to match my speed. Using Yin Evil Chi to perform the Yin Evil Demon Claw will also greatly enhance its power. After some thought, Chu Xuan spent a few days crafting 20 small jade bottles. The bottoms of these bottles were engraved with chi-gathering formations, which could accumulate Yin Evil Chi within them. Though each small jade bottle was only the size of a palm, it could contain enough yin evil qi to support Chu Xuan's escape for over 300 lei. Chu Xuan, riding his heavenly star flying sword, entered the yin evil soul snatching array. He buried these 20 jade bottles at various points within the large array. He then sat cross-legged at the center of the array, utilizing the crisscrossing yin evil qi of the site to cultivate the blood evil demon refining scripture. In such an environment, the speed of his cultivation would further accelerate. He set a modest goal for himself to break through to the second level of the foundation establishment stage in one go. In the provincial capital of Linjiang Province, Dragon River City. This vast city was bisected by the Dragon River. To the north of the river, educational institutions abound, including the much-coveted Life Sciences Research Institute dreamt of by countless students. To the south, many corporate headquarters clustered, making it a hub of booming commerce. The Linjiang military's barracks were stationed in the south. Following the outbreak of the zombie crisis, the Linjiang military was among the first to enter Dragon River City to maintain order. General Yi Nanqian of Linjiang issued martial law, establishing 3 rules that stabilized Dragon River City, gradually turning it into a sanctuary envisioned by many survivors. Every day, a large number of survivors from all over Linjiang Province rushed here, seeking refuge in the safe haven of Dragon River City. Atop a tall building, a robust middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back, gazing over the city, his brows furrowed deeply. His face was marked by the vicissitudes of life, with streaks of silver beginning to show at his temples. He was Yi Nanqian, the commander of the Linjiang army. Footsteps approached from behind. A close aide approached briskly, bowing respectfully. "General, Chief Zeng from the Research Institute has arrived." Yi Nanqian nodded. "Please, let him in." Moments later, Yi Nanqian met with Zeng Baoshan in the reception room. Yi Nanqian smiled. "Professor Zeng, what brings you here? Is there progress in the research?" Zeng Baoshan replied excitedly, "Exactly. The 3rd-level psionic core we brought back from East Lake City is very valuable. The Institute has produced a new batch of psionic potions, and we have already begun experimenting on animals. Perhaps in a year or 2, we can start mass production. By then, everyone could become supernatural." Yi Nanqian nodded solemnly. "That's wonderful news indeed. As for scientific research, Professor Zeng, you know far more than I do. I entrust you fully with this responsibility, and I'm very reassured by that." Zeng Baoshan paused, then added, "There's another matter about the cultivator from East Lake City I mentioned last time." Yi Nanqian chuckled. "A cultivator? To me, he's just a superhuman with unique talents." "Professor, you might be overthinking it. With the vast population of the Han country, there must be many superhumans with unique talents." Yi Nanqian wasn't too concerned. Zeng Baoshan insisted earnestly, "General Yi, regardless, if we could ally with that cultivator, it would certainly be a great asset. We mustn't push him towards our enemies." Yi Nanqian nodded. "I have my own considerations for that." Zeng Baoshan nodded and then departed. Moments later, another aide hurried over. "General, a gigantic aquatic creature has been detected in the Dragon River Basin within our city. It's over 30 meters in length." Yi Nanqian raised an eyebrow. "How many people saw it?" The aide replied respectfully, "The creature appeared at night, and only 4 soldiers on guard on both banks of the Dragon River saw it." Yi Nanqian nodded. "Bring those 4 soldiers to the general's mansion, seal their lips, and forbid anyone from spreading the word about this aquatic creature. Anyone who disobeys shall be detained immediately." "How many commanders are in the city?" The aide responded, 2 commanders are escorting a convoy to Hanhai Province, 3 are stationed outside guarding our assets, and 5 are still in the city." Yi Nanqian nodded. "Call them immediately for a meeting." "Yes, sir."